Welcome to By Seat and By Saddle, seeing North America by car and by motorcycle. After our retirement in 2011, my wife Sue and I made a number of road trips around North America, taking pictures of what we saw and recording what we did. Thinking our experiences might be useful to others planning similar road trips, we decided to preserve and share our travel diaries. This is part 4 of a trip we took in April of 2013. In this part, we visited a southwest Texas border town and then explored the largest national park in Texas. We then traveled back east, enjoying the Gulf of Mexico beaches before turning north and heading for home. As with the other trip diaries on this channel, we have again created a list of trip highlights, should you want to jump to items that might be of more interest to you or return to something you'd like to see again. So come on and travel with us. We will take you along with words and photographs. It's a pleasure to share them with you. At the end of part 3, we were cruising along Highway FM 170, also called Camino del Rio, enjoying sweeping vistas from the shoulders of mountains and the dark canyons that concealed the meander of the Rio Grande River. Our motorcycle engine never missed a beat as we rumbled up and down rugged hillsides. We looked forward to arriving in Presidio, a Texas border town with a little over 3,000 people that was located beyond the boundary of Big Bend Ranch State Park. About 3/4 of the way to Presidio, we rode through the tiny town of Redford. In 2013, its population was only 7 people. However, it still had quite a nice elementary school, which we stopped to take a picture of. In subsequent years, Redford's population increased substantially, but more recently its population has again plummeted, and a Google search suggests that in 2022 it was actually 0. As we rode into Presidio, a stately tree-lined boulevard of palm trees made quite a welcoming impression. We had lunch in a little cafe on the main road and took only one picture, that of an interesting but puzzling artistic creation. It is a carved figure in front of a pastoral mural showing a horse with a spear and shield, some cows, a church, and 3 windmills. We think it may have been Father Eusebio Francisco Kino, a Jesuit missionary known as the Padre on horseback and still venerated throughout the entire Southwest. We were exposed to his legacy in Arizona. See our trip number 11, part 3. There's even a YouTube adventure documentary titled Mission to Glory, A True Story, that details his life of accomplishment and adventure. Presidio was once called El Polvo, and this Catholic church with its impressive shrine still serves both El Polvo and Redford. To us, the harshness of desert climate and the absence of grass was very foreign. We therefore found building styles and the accommodation of the heat and lack of water quite interesting. At one time, this must have been a car repair facility or a highway emergency station. The name on the sign, Cadero, was a family name in the area. The old Ford truck was a 1.5-ton wrecker from about 1945. Seeing this was as much fun for me as visiting a whole car museum. A couple of minutes later, we also spotted this truck. It is a Chevrolet 4400, maybe from 1952 or 53, in great shape and still doing the job of a working truck. Really impressive. After seeing Presidio, we turned around and rode back east, passing Lajitas and Terlingua, and then a bit north on Highway 118 to our motel. Traveling the Camino del Rio, or River Road 170, in the opposite direction was no less spectacular than the first time. Sue took the pictures while we were riding, which makes the foreground a bit blurry. However, they still clearly capture what we were seeing. The next day, we rode into Big Bend National Park. We took this picture after dark that day as an afterthought, just to remember the sign. Our first priority was getting an RV campsite at the Rio Grande village. RV sites, unlike tenting campsites, include electrical hookup. We needed power for our fan, which was absolutely essential in the desert heat. On the map, the Rio Grande village is at line numbered 1. From our RV site, we could see the camping area for tents, and in the morning we noticed javelinas wandering through the tent camping area. We wished we could have gotten a picture of them, but weren't able to, so we satisfied ourselves with a picture of a nearby warning sign. At the time we were there, the only food we could find in the village was cold burritos which we heated in their microwave. So, after settling in, we decided to ride over to the restaurant at the Chisos Basin Lodge. The lodge is just beside the Chisos Basin Visitor Center. See line number 2. From the mileages given on the map, it was about 31 miles away. Somewhere we stopped to take a picture of this sign, perhaps near Panther Junction, shown at line number 3. While we were obviously in little danger on the main road, we felt especially safe on our motorcycle. We assumed 2 wheels would be faster than 4 feet, but then we never really had to test our theory. The restaurant at the lodge provides an expansive view of what is called the window to the Chisos Mountains. This view is really appealing and is often shown in online sites. Its exact location is shown by line number 4 on the map. After lunch, we started cruising. We didn't try to identify or record notable views or peaks, but simply enjoyed them as they passed by. First, we rode south on the Ross Maxwell Scenic Drive, identified by line number 5. The Mule Ear Peaks are 1,040 feet high and uniquely identifiable even as seen from the Ross Maxwell Highway, and are shown by line number 6 on the map. Just a little further along is the awesome Cerro Castellon Peak, which rises 1,000 feet above the ground around it. See line number 7. A second picture shows the Cerro Castellon Peak from a different angle. It is one of a group of summits called the Corazones Peaks. A bit further and we stopped at the visitor center in the town of Castellon. See line number 8. Castellon has a population of about 250 people. It also has several campgrounds and some stunning surrounding views. The Castellon Visitor Center is in the Garlic House, an adobe structure built in 1925. It has served many purposes over time and was even used as a schoolhouse during the 1930s. By the way, adobe construction, as described in trip number 2, part 1, uses bricks made from dirt mixed with straw, grass, or manure. The slightly repugnant process to make them is demonstrated in the previously mentioned movie Mission to Glory, a True Story. We continued on westward toward what is possibly the most awesome chasm in Big Bend National Park, the Santa Elena Canyon. It was about 8 miles further along. The gigantic cliffs of the Sierra del Carmen range on the Mexican side of the river provided a tantalizing taste of what we'd be seeing shortly. To capture a memory of riding our motorcycle in these incredible surroundings, we took off our helmets, balanced our camera on a rock, and took some selfies. We then rode down to the Santa Elena Canyon River access, line number 9. It really was awe-inspiring. Note, though, that the riverbed here was completely dry. Many online photographs show this location flooded. However, there was still enough water in the Rio Grande for Mexican cattle to come down for a drink. The Santa Elena Canyon also has a canyon trail. It is shown by line number 10. However, since we preferred to do our hill climbing on the motorcycle, definitely not on foot, we skipped the trail and got back on the bike. We retraced our route back to our campsite, taking pictures as we rode. We've included only a few. At home, we only see cactuses in greenhouses, and so wild cactuses flowering in the desert were pretty special to us, so we stopped a few times to photograph the novelty. This tunnel on Highway 118 indicated that we were getting close to the Rio Grande overlook and our campsite in the Rio Grande village, line number 11. We stopped for the night and prepared to get going again early the next day. A couple of miles east of our campsite was the Boquillas Crossing port of entry, a border crossing into Mexico. It was opposite the Mexican village of Boquillas del Carmen, line number 12. This border crossing had been closed in 2002 because of the attack on the Twin Towers of the New York Trade Center in 2001. It had just reopened on April 10, 2013, a few days before we had arrived there. Taking a picture of the motorcycles in the parking lot of the port of entry, I inadvertently got a picture of the Boquillas del Carmen village across the river. Boquillas del Carmen has a population of about 200 and survives on tourism. When we were there, the water level was low, and so we could have waded across the border into Mexico. Then, as now, it was done by many tourists and was completely legal. We were told we could also take the rowboat, which handled 2 or 3 passengers together with a Mexican oarsman. If you're interested, you can listen to a song on YouTube by American folk songwriter Robert Earl Keen titled Gringo Honeymoon, which describes his visit to Boquillas del Carmen. In the border station, a plate in a wall opening contains a depiction of a scorpion. It is especially fitting because Mexico has the highest diversity of scorpions in the world and records about 200,000 stings and 300 deaths per year. Although the scorpion motif is threatening and sinister, they are often kept as pets. It is also interesting that scorpions are the only arachnids, meaning spiders and such, that give birth to live young. The mother catches each one being born with her front appendages and cares for her offspring for several months. A few miles further east was the Boquillas Canyon, see line number 13. It had a trail we wanted to explore, line 14. Sections of the trail ran high above the river. Other parts of the trail went down to the water's edge. Being near the water was always pleasant, and the fact that it was an international boundary was also pretty cool. Along the trail, we came upon these holes in the bedrock. They are explained on the Boquillas Canyon Trail sign shown in an earlier picture. It is thought they are prehistoric mortar holes in which nomadic tribes ground seeds, roots, and mesquite beans. Here in the center of the Chihuahuan Desert, it was interesting to see how river moisture supported vegetation and flowering cacti on the banks. A little west of our campsite lay the Hot Springs Historic District, line number 15. This layered rock outcrop near the river was quite distinctive and a perfect geologic formation for the mud nests of cliff swallows. Notice how the nests are built into shallow hollows which provide nest support and shelter from the elements and predators. The hot springs themselves were a great place to relax and soak up mineral salts. Swimming or diving? Well, not so much. Here spring water containing dissolved solids and mineral salts comes out of the ground at 105 degrees Fahrenheit. The hot springs location also included an interesting trail. As the river here can be easily crossed by wading, the trail was being used by illegal vendors crossing from Mexico to sell souvenirs to trail users. We saw one such vendor, but for some reason he disappeared quickly when we tried to approach him. Although the vendors seemed reluctant to do business in person, they did occasionally set up small displays to sell their crafts where you paid on an honor system by putting money into a jar. We took a picture of one such display. The items offered were a stone with a chipped edge resembling an axe, and small decorations representing an ocotillo plant, 2 scorpions, and what is probably a small roadrunner, the state bird of New Mexico. Also along the trail were some limestone walls decorated with petroglyphs of arrowheads, carved into the limestone by Native Americans in pre-European times. Such carvings were said to be done with a hammerstone and a stone chisel. Here we are approaching and crossing the Tornillo Creek Bridge. We were puzzled to see such a long and attractive bridge in the desert, particularly as there was no water to be seen anywhere in the vicinity. We later learned we were looking at Tornillo Creek, which drains the entire eastern part of the park into the Rio Grande River. Tornillo Creek is normally dry, but can apparently become an absolute torrent during summer thunderstorms. Makes one wonder about inadvertent risks for uninformed tourists like ourselves. Well, we had finally finished our visit to Big Bend and left the park on Highway 385, stopping only for a farewell drink and marathon. We now traveled back east on Highway 90, and after a bit over an hour, took a passing picture of an old building in Dryden, the Dryden Mercantile. It was once a thriving store and post office, but a recent YouTube video titled "The Saddest Store in Texas" says that it was hit by an 18-wheeler in 2017 and is now in shambles. The driver would have had quite a time trying to explain it wasn't his fault. Our next stop along Highway 90 was about 1.5 hours further east, Comstock, Texas. It is next to the Seminole Canyon State Park and Historic Site. We decided to camp there. Interestingly, we had just crossed the Pecos River, which we had encountered before in New Mexico. First in Villanueva, Trip 2 Part 1, and then later in Carlsbad, Trip 2 Part 2. The Pecos is the largest river in New Mexico. It flows almost 1,000 miles, much of the distance through desert landscapes. Here, at the Amistad Reservoir, it finally reaches the end of the line and disappears into the Rio Grande River. We were quite surprised to see motorboats and other sports craft on this desert reservoir, but did not get a picture of them. Now it was really time to head for home, and on the way we took a few random pictures. I had to get a shot of the old Jack's service station pickup and the 4 antique tractors that seemed to be standing guard over the site. We camped at Ocean Springs and several times saw the lone alligator that lived in their gator pond. We were delighted to hear him bellowing his mating call several times, but had no way to record it. To us it sounded like something between the roar of a lion and the moo of a cow. We doubted there was another alligator around within miles, so we thought he was probably wasting his time. Breaks from driving were a pleasure as we traveled along the Gulf Coast beaches. Traveling straight east, we soon reached the Interstate I-75 where we turned north and blitzed our way home. We have now reached the end of Part 4, which concludes trip number 9. Our motorcycle lugging us up and down the rugged hills and canyons beside the Rio Grande made for an unforgettable adventure. The relaxed pace and lifestyle in these border regions seemed to slow the passage of time, which kept remnants and reminders of its rich historical legacy alive. The breathtaking mountain scenery in both the state and national parks was enhanced by the desert climate, which limited vegetation and created vistas with stunningly clear views. The appeal of the rugged topography and agreeable winter climate was enhanced by proximity to an international boundary and a different culture. On our way home, we maintained our southern latitude to again enjoy the Mississippi Gulf beaches as we had on previous trips. We arrived home near the end of April and were happy to unload our travel gear, organize our photos, and get back to our normal activities and pastimes. Stay with us for other interesting trips.